welcome to a new emergency episode of the 5 Sports Podcast. Today we're here to talk about the Raptors in the upcoming season and preview and make some low predictions about what we expect to see from the team this season. So let's get right off to it. Evan, what are some early thoughts on the Raptors this season?
Yeah, I think the Raptors season is going to be defined by a lot of the young players, a lot of the players that we're really not talking about. I'm not even referring to, Malachi Flynn, the first round pick. There's a lot of young players, or there's a lot of guys that have been around that if the Raptors really want to excite someone, or if they really want to put pressure on some teams, it's not going to come from the three-headed guys like Kyle Lowry, Siakam and Van Vliet. Those are the guys that kind of establish themselves as almost household names. It's going to be guys like Norman Powell. It's going to be guys like OG Anunoby. Maybe it's going to be a guy like Terrence Davis if he can kind of emerge out of the depths of the Raptors backcourt. So there's a lot of I think we know a lot about the Raptors. We know about their identity. We know what Nick Nurse is bringing. We know what kind of style they're going to play. We know it's going to be hard defense. The question is, can they compete with some of these teams on offense? Are they going to be able to shoot the three well enough? Are they going to shoot it at a consistent enough rate to really scare some teams, come playoff time? The expectations aren't that high for the Raptors. As we know, losing Ibaka doesn't help. They don't really have that superstar that we always talk about. But the Raptors, they're going to be competitive. There's no doubt. They still have a great roster, and they're going to compete every night. We know what the Raptors bring. We know what they are. That's kind of where we are with the Raptors.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason why we're still a playoff team is because we have Nick Nurse, who is like the best, if not one of the best coaches in the league right now. And I think you're spot on. Like, we have to look at the players, Norman Powell, OG Anunoby. We need to see if they can actually have breakout seasons. We see glimpses of them like being able to break out in like past seasons, but we need to see them like now that we lost Ibaka, now that we lost Gasol, now we lost like these key pieces in our center position. We need to see like these like our guards and forwards kind of like take a step forward and try to like make up for what we lost. And I think also I'll say this about Siakam, he needs to. We both agree on something that he's not a superstar, but I think we need to see if he can step into that role. Because if anyone can at the moment, it would be him.
Yeah,
Him or at least Van Vliet. One of the two. They need
that
to be able to step
sorry.
into that position of being a superstar. Because it won't be Larry anymore because he's simply just too old. Larry's more of a leader than he is that he provides his actual ability to play basketball. Even though he's still a good player. But we need to see Siakam and Van Vliet kind of take that like spot as like we are like the face of the franchise. We can carry the franchise to a playoff win. But I just don't see it happening yet because the simple fact that the East just got harder as a conference. Like usually we talk about how good the West Conference is and how weak the East is. I still say the Western Conference is stronger, but the East is not a joke anymore, and it's not going to be easy for Raptors to like come back to like being the first or second team they were last year or the year before.
It's interesting. They could still be, in second or third place. I don't discount that as long as they're healthy. Because, injuries could happen. Brooklyn isn't a guarantee in the regular season. Jimmy Butler's going to take a lot of time out or time off, within the season, for rest or whatever. He'll call, whatever injury he has, he'll kind of play it off like Kawhi Leonard will. There's a lot of unknowns in the regular season, but we always see consistency from the Raptors, even when we had Dwayne Casey. That's just the culture we have. The Raptors have kind of built a culture where the players know what's expected of them and what they have to do, but they're always going to play kind of above their skill level in the regular season. That's just what they do because they always play with heart. They always have that hustle. That motivation never goes away for the Raptors. But what would take them to the next step? I know Freddie is going to have a career year. Sometimes you just you see things in the NBA. Pardon me. The NBA is sometimes an easier league to predict just based off history and based off kind of what you see. It's it's not like the NFL or the NHL where sometimes even though someone passed the eye test, game to game, you can have an off game. Basketball is very consistent in kind of what you see. And I guarantee you Freddie's going to have a career year in points, probably in assists. But you'll definitely see an improvement from Freddie. Kyle Lowry, I don't think he doesn't have a margin of error or a margin to really improve, but the margin to kind of struggle is there. So he has to he keeps he keeps track of his health very well. He's a guy that with incredible longevity and kind of the toll that he puts his body in with offensive fouls. He consistently takes care of himself, but again, that has to take a toll. So I think there's more upside for him to really struggle this year. If an injury happens, maybe his shot's off. Kyle Lowry has to consistently play well if the Raptors want to do well. We know that as the leader of the team. But the biggest question mark is Siakam, because if the Raptors want, any consideration to be, a playoff team knocking on the door, maybe cause a few upsets, and nothing's impossible in sports, but Siakam has to fill that role, and he can. The potential is there, but the shooting definitely has to improve, and he has to be more consistent with his decision making inside. And he has to be the leader now, because Kyle Lowry, he'll lead from the point, but he has to be the big man that's kind of controlling everything. He has to take control of the offense, because they will live and die by Siakam. We know what everyone else is going to bring. We saw what Siakam could do with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi isn't here. OG, will obviously elevate his game, but Siakam is the guy. We paid him to be the guy, so we have to see now what he can do now that we know the Giannis sweepstakes are over for this team.
I have to ask you, where in the conferences do you see the Raptors finishing? What's your prediction, early prediction?
Yeah, a lot could play into that. Help from other teams, health from the Raptors. It's very hard to predict, especially in a slightly shortened season. 72 game season, a lot of back to backs. I think the Raptors, being a younger team, that should help them. They're one of the more kind of longer athletic teams that defense always comes through. So I think on those back to backs that will help them. I feel like they'll be either in 3 or 4. I don't think they'll be in 2, because Milwaukee has a number 1 spot lockdown. Simply, they're the regular season kings. That's not going to change unless Giannis, suffers an injury that keeps him out for a large part of the season. So it's going to be interesting. But I see them in 3 or 4, because they will do well in the regular season. They still have a lot of talent on that roster. Yeah, they'll finish in around 3 or 4. I'm 90% sure. I don't think it'll be any higher or any lower.
I think around like 4. I think Milwaukee, like you said, is first. I think Boston will take second. I think like Jason Tatum's going to take another step
Yeah,
forward as a
I agree
superstar.
with Boston. Boston can finish 1. I think Boston definitely can finish 1 this
They
year.
have
I
keys for
disagree.
it. They
I
have
think
keys for it.
Boston will finish 1 and Milwaukee will finish 2. But yeah, okay, we're on the same
I
page, with those
I
two.
think Brooklyn could finish third if like because you never know with KD. People keep forgetting after him saying last year that he's still like when he's playing he's like one of the best players in the league. And I think Raptors can take fourth. I think it'll be Raptors or Miami, but like I think Raptors can edge out in the regular season. Playoffs will be a different story because like you said, Jimmy Butler he takes a lot of games off. But like I think it's Raptors take fourth. I don't think it's gonna be Philly because I think Philly's a talented team, but they always just seem to have like a mixed match of. But hey, you never know because they don't have a Brown
Philly comes
coach.
down to health. Philly really comes down to health, because
Yeah,
Ben Simmons and especially Embiid, Embiid's missed a lot of time
yeah.
over his entire career. So Philadelphia is all yeah, the Raptors could be in they could find themselves in the 6th spot if they're not careful.
Yeah.
But I believe enough in the coaching. I believe enough in the players. They don't take any days off in the regular season. I feel like they'll be healthy this year. Unless freak injuries happen, but I'm assuming they'll be relatively healthy, as as they have historically been.
Moving away from the Raptors, let's make some predictions on who we think will win the certain awards and, of course, the NBA Finals of the season. So let's start with the MVP. Evan, who is MVP of this season?
Between 2 guys, between my favorite for me is Doncic, just because of the talent he has. He's such a special player, Doncic, and I think he's going to grow into that role of leader, superstar. He's superstar, but just his overall game. I think if he takes a massive jump this year, which I think he will, I think there's no question that he's going to win MVP. He was close last year as a rookie. I just think he may have the edge. And my one kind of, I guess, underdog, if it's not going to be Luka Doncic, it will be Damian Lillard. If he can find a way to carry Portland to maybe a top 3 spot in the Western Conference. And if he can put up the numbers that he is capable of putting up, if he can, have a career year, the prime of his career, he may have, an outside shot outside of, guys like Doncic and Anthony Davis. I think those are your top 3 guys to win. I give the edge to Doncic simply because of his all around ability. But if Damian Lillard could kind of pull something out of his hat, if he can be consistent all year, then there is a real possibility of Damian Lillard winning MVP.
I will say this: I have also got 2 players. One of them is Doncic, and because I think he's just an extremely talented player, and I personally think he is like the future, like he's a generational talent, and he's going to be kind of the face of the NBA within like the next decade or so. In terms of my other prediction, the MVPs like over the years they follow a certain pattern. Like they always like have the players have nice stats, obviously not necessarily the best stats, but they have nice stats. They finish in a team that's like in top 3 in the conference, and they need to have they often have a nice story to your season.
Yeah,
that's why I think, even though this might not be a popular one, I think it might be Kevin Durant because he came back from injury and he can be the player that brings Brooklyn to being a top 3 team in the East. And because of that, and we know what Kevin Durant's about. We know how good a talented player he is. We don't know how well he's going to be after that because that was a pretty big injury he got 2 years ago. But if he recovered fully and is like even like 3/4 of the player that he was before the injury, that is still a very talented player. And I think he has a shot of being MVP. But that being said, I don't disagree that Lillard and Anthony Davis are contenders for MVP as well because they are also huge contributors to the team they are on and are big factors on why the team goes far.
yeah. I think with Kevin Durant, I think we all have this image of Kevin Durant. Whether you believe he's the best scorer of all time, we know what he is, and he's a special player. And I think the problem is, I don't think he will reach that kind of peak that we've seen throughout his career, whether it was in Golden State or OKC. I think he will still have a terrific year. I think he will finish top 5 in MVP voting. Possible, it's tough, but he has to basically break his own records, and I don't think coming off his injury he will. He just has to have such a special year, Kevin Durant, for us to kind of view him as an MVP. It's almost like LeBron James, and we've seen him at his best, and no matter what, we're never going to view him that way because of what we've seen, and we can't really give him the MVP simply because, or for whatever reason, he'll just never have that kind of image of he's at the best of his game. He's not the most valuable player. He may be, but he would never get that award, as we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yeah, because you could argue last season that he deserved the award.
Like, I feel like Kevin Durant has reached, the top level already, and I feel like there's no chance that he'd have to go above that, and you'd have to go above and beyond and do even better than what he did in his MVP season. And I don't think that's possible in a shortened season. Coming off that coming off that ACL injury, I just don't think it's possible for them to consider him as an MVP this year. But I understand where you're coming from.
Let's move on to Defensive Player of the Year. Who do you have for that?
You know what? The easy call is Anthony Davis, and I think he will win. Just we know all about Anthony Davis. We know about his ability. Is there much more we could say about Anthony Davis and why he should be the Defensive Player of the Year?
I love Anthony Davis. Like, there's so much that he does on the floor, and it's kind of.
It'd feel repetitive almost. Anything we said, if it feels like it would be repetitive, it'd be a shock if Anthony Davis didn't win. Someone would have to have a really good year, and then Davis would have to either be injured or
yeah. But like Davis is just a different being, really.
Yeah, it's like sometimes when you have someone that possesses certain abilities like Anthony Davis does, no matter what someone else does, it's hard to kind of dethrone them as Defensive Player of the Year. I don't see anyone other than Anthony Davis winning this year. The talent's there. We all know what he produces, and I think we can move on from Defensive Player of the Year. I think we know that Anthony Davis should be, and it's a safe pick, but
it's kind of an obvious pick too. There are good players. You could argue like someone like Gobert, but
sometimes you have to make the obvious pick in life.
Yeah. moving on, let's go to sixth man of the year.
I had trouble with this one. There's a few options, but there's someone that I really do like, and I think if he can score at a consistent level, he has an outside shot of winning, and that's Jordan Clarkson. He was terrific in the playoff series against Denver, despite them losing. It was a Jamal Murray show, but Jordan Clarkson, if he can come off the bench, and I think he is coming into his own last year with Utah. I think he's getting comfortable towards the end of the year. I think Jordan Clarkson may win Sixth Man of the Year this year. There's a few guys that people mention, like Montrezl Harrell. I think he's the favorite. But I think there's a lot of guys on the Lakers, and I think he may get overshadowed. I like Jordan Clarkson because I think he has a chance to really step up and prove his worth on that Utah team.
It's funny you say Montrezl because I was thinking about a Lakers player, but I wasn't thinking of him. I was thinking of actually Dennis Schroeder because we saw what he could do in OKC. We saw how much he contributed off the bench, and I know that he is trying to play. I know he's trying to get that starting position in Lakers, but until he has that, I think he is a valuable asset off the bench. And I think given what he was able to do, like come off the bench and still playing like Chris Paul and like Shea Gilgeous Alexander, I think like playing with LeBron and like AD, I think that's like always playing with the Lakers is such an elevation over playing with the OKC. I think the Lakers can help him grow in this game because Lakers Lakers bench was not good last year. They had a few like solid pieces, but they did not have a deep team other than LeBron and Davis. That was kind of it. They had, of course, they had Rondo. Rondo was probably like their third best contributor. Rondo had to work hard because they were these veteran guys that offer a lot in the playoffs. But the Lakers not have a deep team. They have a deeper team this year, and I think with
Yeah,
the way they play, I think they can give the opportunity for Schroeder to really break out on his own.
yeah, I think it's a good shout. And yeah, if he produces for the Lakers, I think there is definitely an outside shot for Dennis Schroeder to be Sixth Man of the Year. Most improved. Who do you have as most improved player this year? Just say you say because I have a guy with a lot of upside.
Okay, my dog likes my pick. I think Lonzo Ball. I think because I think if Zion is healthy and he gets like a full season, I think Lonzo Ball. We know about Lonzo Ball. He doesn't have a good shot. We know what he can't do, but he is also an elite passer. I think that's the one credit that I could really give him, and give him like someone like Zion to like kind of like good balls to, and like of course the Pelicans also still have Brandon Ingram as well. They have a pretty solid team, a young solid team there. I think we can see Lonzo Ball finally break out as a talent that the Lakers thought he was going to be when they drafted him second overall. There's not much more I could really say because even as I say it, I'm not 100% sure in my choice, but it's one of those gut feelings. I think, and as a Lakers fan, I've been waiting for Lonzo Ball to kind of break out for a while now, and even though he's in Pelicans, I'm curious to see if or not it happens, and I think it can happen.
I think the problem with Lonzo is we know what a great passer is. We know that he can rebound for a point guard because he has that size. The only way he wins if he shoots out of the roof, and I see no possibility of that happening. So I don't think he would be the most improved because the only way that happens if his shot is the most improved that I've ever seen. For me, it's DeAndre Ayton. I think he has a nice setup in Phoenix. I think having now Chris Paul and Devin Chris Paul is going to help not only Devin Booker, but he's definitely going to help DeAndre Ayton. And I think DeAndre Ayton getting a full season under his belt with a lot more talent on that roster, I think the upside is definitely there. We've seen a lot from DeAndre Ayton. We've seen the hype. I think this may be the year that he puts it all together. If he does, I think there's no way he doesn't win most improved because I think the talent's definitely there. I think now he has a point guard that could really help facilitate for him. And I think if he can, put up the numbers to back that up, and if the defense gets even better than what we've seen over his first 2 years, I think he has a real shot at winning most improved.
Oh, I definitely see that. But my only argument against it would have been I think we already see DeAndre Ayton as an extremely talented player. I think his talent's kind of already there, kind of clear to see. And like I usually think most improved players kind of goes to players that kind of fly under the radar. But I think like I mean, to be fair, DeAndre Ayton isn't like the biggest name in the game, so that is definitely a possibility for him to win. His
I
game definitely will
think
improve.
he has a name because he's the number one pick. I think he definitely has the hype around him, but he hasn't really put together. If he can produce at an elite level, that the possibility for him and the potential talent wise definitely there for them. If he can put it together this year, because we've seen glimpses, but we haven't seen consistency. If he can consistently have great games, and if he can have the numbers to back that up, I think he definitely has a shot to pull off
Yeah,
most improved. But there's a few guys you could throw in there. There's a lot of guys that have potential that maybe have not filled it, like Michael Porter Jr. He's
yeah,
definitely a possibility. Guys like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. We've seen potential from a lot of guys, but we have to it's the award's going to go to the guy that produces consistently. It's going to go to a guy that we know has talent but can consistently put together over a full season. Remember, it's
yeah.
a regular season award, so I think Phoenix. I think Phoenix has the right tools in place for DeAndre Ayton to really succeed, and I think that's why I'm leaning towards him as really fulfilling his potential over a full season.
They definitely have him in the right system to succeed because again, Chris Paul, he is like one of the best passers like in this decade, and he's one of the best playmakers and like one of the best facilitators in the game. So I could definitely see like DeAndre Ayton taking that step forward as a player.
Yeah.
All right, Coach of the Year. Who do you have for that?
I think I have one more. Let's go Rookie of the Year. Can
Do
we
you
go
have Rookie
Rookie
of
of
the
the
Year?
Year.
Okay, Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
Who do you have?
For me, I have an outside pick, but I have Cole Anthony. I like what he brought to North Carolina, and I think Orlando is kind of that bubble playoff team. And I think if Cole Anthony has the opportunity to step in and produce, I've seen a lot from him in North Carolina as a Tar Heel fan. I think maybe I'm a little biased on this pick because of my affiliation with North Carolina, but I think if Orlando gives him the opportunity, I think Cole Anthony could really run with that chance and really surprise a lot of people.
I'm personally going with James Wiseman in Golden State. I think it might be a bit of an obvious pick, but I think like we like with the talent that surrounds him in Golden State, it's kind of a perfect situation for him. Golden State always needed a big man, and now they have it in the form of James Wiseman. You know, Curry's gonna take a lot of shots, and like
Yeah.
he can easily get those rebounds, and he has a lot of opportunities to like show what he can do inside the game. But like also like it's just Golden State's a talented team. Like people they followed the playoffs last year, so people kind of forget that. But they have a lot of good players on that team, a lot of great players on that roster, and with the 4 and 5 being Draymond and Wiseman, I think that's just a solid like inside threat. And I think players like Curry and Oubre Jr. and Clay's out, but like also Wiggins, I think these are players that can kind of provide him with the ability to thrive as a rookie.
The one problem I have with James Wise, I don't have a problem with him. I think the one reason he may not win it is when you look at Rookie of the Year over the last few years, it's always guys that are on bad teams.
Mm.
You look at Ja Morant last year; he really elevated. Without Ja Morant, Memphis isn't the same team. When you who won it the year before? Ben Simmons. You looked at
Yeah.
Philadelphia before, and he changed the team. I don't think James Wiseman's going to change the team. I think with Steph Curry back, he's going to be the focal point, and everyone's going to be talking about Steph Curry. And I think he really has the potential to have a great year. The pieces are all there for Steph Curry. And you also have Draymond Green. I don't think James Wiseman will have enough opportunities to be Rookie of the Year, if that makes any sense.
No,
I just
that
think
makes sense.
there's almost too much talent, and a lot of people are talking James Wiseman because the talent's definitely there. He will have a terrific career, but I think Golden State's success isn't going to be dependent on him. It's going to be dependent on Steph, and I think that's the one thing that scares me about James Wiseman. James Wiseman not winning Rookie of the Year. I think that's why he won't. I just think with Steph Curry, he won't have enough opportunities to be the guy to prove that he is the best rookie out of this draft class.
Fair point. Next, we have Coach of the Year.
I want to say Nick Nurse just for, just for fun, but the guy I'm going to go with is Brad Stevens. I think Boston's going to finish number one, and I think if they do, and if they dethrone Milwaukee for that number one spot, I think it's going to be because of Brad Stevens' coaching ability. We know about all the talent on that team. Jason Tatum, if he takes a massive step up, we're all going to be looking at Brad Stevens, complimenting the way he's developed this young roster. I think the potential is there for Brad Stevens to do it. If they finish number one, I think it's going to be a hard ask not to give him the award.
Yeah, I was going to actually go with Brad Stevens too because, I mean, it's just you can't question how great a coach he is and how he just built this, like how he brought up this young Boston team. And I think like Jason Tatum is going to take that step forward. He's going to be that star player that Brad Stevens relies on because like he has that superstar potential. I'm not sure if he's quite there yet, but he almost is. And I said this all the time before. Like Jason Tatum's like a young Kobe Bryant, and I hate saying that
Yeah.
because he's a Celtic, and I hate the Celtics as well as a Raptors and as a Laker fan. But like he has that like potential there, and I think
He has that it factor about him.
yeah. And Brad Stevens, so he has the talent on the roster he has, and he's a good coach. He's great ability to coach in his own right. And they are that Boston's a team that can kind of be that number one, number two seed in the East, and they're expecting to have a great season. I want to say like Nick Nurse obviously as like the best coach, but we
Yeah,
know
but
that
we know he's not going to. In our hearts, Nick Nurse is the best coach in the league. We know
like
that it's
he doesn't have
okay.
the roster for him to win Coach of the
Yeah,
Year. Simple as
like
that.
he doesn't need the recognition. It's okay. We're not upset. We have Nick Nurse. No Toronto fan's going to complain if he doesn't win an award. He won it
Yeah,
last year. We're happy. I think they have finished number one though. I think they will, and that's why I penciled in Brad Stevens. It's someone has to take that leap in the NBA. Someone has to overachieve. And it can be many guys. We really don't know. I just like Boston, and I think we're on the same page on that. I think just that they have the talent on the team. We know Brad Stevens is a great coach. I think they will reach the next level, and I think Brad Stevens will get the credit he deserves.
yeah. I mean, when you look at Celtics, think about the fact that like as well, late 2000s they had an aging roster of like Pierce, Garnett, Ray Allen, and then they had a rebuild that really didn't take as long as it should have. And
Yeah.
now you guys think they had Brad Stevens as their head coach.
Well, I mean, they can thank Brooklyn for that
That too.
trade. I mean, without Brooklyn, they don't get Jason Tatum. So, yeah, I mean, Brooklyn's back too now.
Yeah.
It was hard to imagine a time where Brooklyn would be able to recover, but luckily they had the allure of kind of New York and playing in Brooklyn and getting
They
Katie and Kyrie
they had the benefit of
as
being in New
free
York,
agents.
but not being the Knicks.
Yeah. The Knicks, yeah, the Knicks are just like the Jets, just two franchises that you feel like will never taste any form of success,
Yeah,
as long as we're alive,
I feel bad for RG Barrett. Like I like RG Barrett. I like the way he plays, but he's not gonna win anything because the Knicks are just that bad.
Yeah, yeah,
He's a Canadian guy. Like I want to see him do well, but like he just
yeah.
won't. Like
Even he's on the Knicks, and I don't think it feels like in the NBA. We're a little off topic, but it doesn't feel like he's a top three Canadian player. It feels like Jamal Murray gets number one. I think he has to be number one, Jamal Murray.
easily number one. Yeah.
And I think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is number two, and Wiggins has just dropped off so much that it's almost hard
Look,
to say
Wiggins.
he's number three. I think Wiggins and RJ Barrett are kind of tied on kind of potential and maybe not potential. Wiggins will never reach his potential, but it feels like RJ Barrett will struggle as long as he's on the Knicks.
Yeah. And Wiggins, like he's never gonna be the Andrew Wiggins that people thought he would be. But he's a solid player. He
But he's
offers
nothing
like some.
special. He's just
Yeah. He's an
we've
average player.
realized he's not a special player. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to judge people based on what they do in the NBA. The NBA, the best are playing the best, and some people don't make the grade. Some people just fall short of expectations. I mean, look, at least you're not Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins. You can maybe take some solace in that. When you talk about Canadians in the NBA.
All right, final question.
Yeah, I know it's coming. The big question.
Who's in the NBA? Who will be in the NBA Finals and who takes the trophy?
I think for the first year, there's a lot of contenders. I think
Yeah.
last year we knew it was between three teams: the Lakers, Clippers, and the Bucks. Miami kind of they came out of nowhere, but they didn't have we saw the Lakers just had too much talent for Miami. Some injuries didn't help them, obviously, but no, not having Bam guard Davis. I think that series could have gone 7 for sure if you have. Again, different story for different day. I think for the first time, there's a lot of contenders and there's a lot of unknown. I looked at Brooklyn this year as a team that can make the finals, or they'll be the Clippers of last year. But I think the reason the Clippers failed wasn't because of Kawhi, is because of Paul George. So I think when you look at Brooklyn, they're not going to fail because of Durant. They would fail because of Kyrie. So Kyrie has a lot of expectations on his shoulders this year, and people have been talking a lot about him. Whether it's his mental state, how motivated is he to play? Will he be a problem? So I think Brooklyn has the highest boom bust potential. So that's a team I'm definitely keeping my eye on. Do I think they'll be in the finals? I don't think Miami will be back. I think Hero and Robinson won't be as good. I think they'll definitely be great. They're great shooters, but I think teams will kind of come up with a plan to limit them in some ways. So I don't have Miami going back there. It's tough for me to see teams going back to back. To me, it's between Brooklyn and Boston. And I think if Brooklyn and Boston meet in the playoffs, I think Brooklyn may have a little more talent and a little bit more depth. But I think those are going to be the teams from the East. I think Brooklyn, I like going with talent in the NBA, so I give them the edge in the West. And as crazy as it may seem, I will have the Clippers going back there. I think Paul George has something to prove. I think Kawhi Leonard, as long as he's healthy, he's still Kawhi Leonard. He's still the best defensive player in the game. A lot of people have the Lakers in there, but I will go I don't like going with, the consensus, because the consensus somehow usually fails in sports. It didn't last year. The Lakers were the favorites. They did win, but I don't think the favorite will win twice. I don't like teams going back to back. For me, it's Brooklyn versus the Clippers, and I think, as crazy as it may sound, I think the Clippers will win the championship this year.
Here's what I don't like with the Clippers. Two things actually. One of them is you say yourself, Paul George. I mean, like playoff P. Like, you don't call Charles Barkley championship Chuck.
He may have something to prove, and I think as long as they stick together, they have a shot. And I think when Kawhi Leonard is healthy, he's the best player in the league. So it's a big question mark. But sometimes I like teams with something to prove, and I picked two teams with definitely something to prove.
Here's the thing about Kawhi. He's a talented player. Don't get me wrong. He is the best two-way player in the game, and I love Kawhi. Like I was a fan of him when he was beating Miami back in San Antonio, and I was a fan of him when he won a championship for Raptors. But here's the thing, and this may be controversial, so just hear me out on this.
Yeah.
He hasn't convinced me as a leader. He's convinced me as a number one option, but he hasn't convinced me as a leader. Because if you look at San Antonio, he had a lot of veteran talent leading that team, and he could just be the young guy who could who was able to stop LeBron defensively. And then Raptors, I'll argue that Larry was kind of still that leader of the Raptors, but then Kawhi was just the number one option to kind of like take them to the championship. But I think in Clippers, you kind of need Kawhi to be a leader, and I think we know Kawhi's personality, and I think he might be too soft-spoken to be a leader, and you can't resort to have like Paul George have that same leadership because he just isn't that type of player either. So you need to be quiet, but I haven't seen him quite have that. I haven't seen him like motivate his team or kind of like bring his team like with the mentality to take over. Like I think he has a mentality on his own. I haven't seen him be able to influence his team that same way, like the way LeBron has, the way Kobe has in 2010, and the way like Jordan has like throughout the 90s. Like I haven't seen Kawhi have that same, like, I don't see Kawhi having that same personality and the same like attitude to do so yet at least.
Yeah, I like that you said that. With this person have to be a leader because you have Tim Duncan, you have Tony Parker. I mean, he was a young guy in on a team full of veterans that have won championships. I think Kawhi Leonard definitely learned a lot, but I think with the Raptors, he led by example. People, expect you to be, be in the media all the time. Kawhi Leonard, he's not going to be, in the media. He's not going to be, yeah, he's not going to be the most outspoken guy. But I think with the Raptors, he definitely led by example. And I think the Raptors took a lot of, I think they took a lot of lessons from Kawhi Leonard and kind of how to be quiet, how to, do hard work that people didn't see. And I think the combination of Nick Nurse and Kawhi Leonard works really well. And I do think Kawhi Leonard, he's not, we don't maybe see him as a leader because he's not that outspoken guy, but I definitely think he leads by example, and you would want him on a championship roster because he brings when he steps on the floor, he brings that intensity every single game, whether um, when he's healthy. Sorry. So Quinn is tough because I think got a bad rep last year with the Clippers, and I don't think the reasons
It wasn't his fault.
or it wasn't his fault, but a lot of people kind of didn't like the way he sat out a few games. I'm like, you guys are still second in the West. Like,
Yeah,
do you guys want to win a championship? Like, do you care what he does in the regular season? Like,
yeah.
do you want to win? So I think the Clippers may have a mentality issue. Um, I think losing Montrezl Harrell will actually help them because I think that pissed a lot of guys off, especially guys like Patrick Beverly. I hope it would have pissed off Paul George, and I don't know if Kawhi ever gets pissed off, with his robotic emotions, but I definitely think he has something to prove. So I like teams something to prove. If pandemic P can kind of figure it out in the playoffs, then I think there's definitely a championship roster there. It just will it come together when it matters most.
Yeah, I think.
So we need your
That,
predictions. You haven't given your predictions yet. You're kind of
well,
avoiding it. I'm
I
not gonna let you off the hook.
I already explained why I don't think it's Clippers.
Yeah,
So, and I want to now say why I think again it's going to be the Lakers. And no, it's not just because I'm a Lakers fan. I just think like
I don't blame you for saying the Lakers. The favorites. You're a Lakers fan. If you weren't picking them, I'd be surprised.
yeah,
But
like
who do you have them playing in the finals? That's a big question.
I have Brooklyn, like you did.
Brooklyn.
Like I just think KD has so much to prove this season, and he wants to prove as well that he could do well Golden State because no, that was probably the biggest criticism against him. Even though he won 2 Finals MVPs, people still say, "Oh yeah, he had to go join a super team to do." And yeah, that is true. He did join a super team, but Kevin Durant is one of the most skilled players to ever play the game, and I think when all is said and done, he is a contender for a top 10 player of all time, quite simply. And then
Oh,
I
he
think
is. He is.
he's
There's no
going
doubt in my
to
mind he's a top 10 player.
exactly, and he's going to want to prove that this season a lot. And I think Steve Nash is a coach who understands how to use the way he played the game back when he was like a player. He's a guy who knows how to use every guy on the team, and I think he'll utilize KD and Kyrie well. My biggest question mark is Kyrie because I just don't like the guy. I'll be honest, I don't like Kyrie Irving because the things he does off the court, like his attitude, just like pisses me off. Like, just shut up sometimes. Like it seems like he's trying to just like cause problems with his teammates, and I don't respect that because he throws LeBron under bus. Who throws LeBron James under bus? Like, he's the reason why you have a championship. Like, and I'm worried that he'll kind of cause some dysfunction between him and KD because they both have pretty big personalities. But I just think that the fact that they're talented enough is enough for them to make the finals. And I think if I argued against them back when those rumors Harden joined them, I think they're better off Harden because they have less personality to have to like try and manage on that team. But the talent's there. Like I said, talent's there. I trust Steve Nash, and I think it's going to be Lakers and Brooklyn. But with the title, I think it's going to be Lakers because I think they're a deeper team than they were last year. LeBron's a year older, but I think LeBron knows how to last long. He knows how to take care of his body to like last in the NBA for a very long time. AD is going to only improve. I think he only has room for improvement. Like he only has like he's still in the early prime of his career. And LeBron is even though he's getting older, he's also getting smarter. He knows how to like make everyone better, and it's just his team's already better than they was last year. I think they're kind of the obvious pick to win the finals. But that being said, I mean anything could surprise me. But for now, I'm convinced that's Lakers.
All right. Well, we agree on some things. We disagree on some others. We have to see how it plays out. That was our emergency NBA podcast season preview. It's going to be a great NBA season. There's a lot to uncover. There's a lot that we're going to learn, and there's going to be a lot of players that kind of emerge. And that's what the NBA is all about. We kind of know about the superstars, but the exciting thing is who will kind of emerge out of the shadows to lead their teams in the NBA. That's why it's a great league. That's why we have a lot of fun covering it. From 5-5 Sports, I've been Evan. Matthew, as always, has joined me. We'll be back tomorrow for our regular show. We'll talk a little bit more about the NBA and also cover the NFL, and we will preview the World Juniors. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, take care.